Okay, so this is pretty cool. In my hands, I'm holding the right hemisphere of a real human brain. Now, most of what you're looking at, see all this folded stuff? That's called the cerebrum. This thing down here is the cerebellum. Now, the cerebrum is in charge of a lot of different things, but what I want to focus on is this part right here. This is called your frontal lobe or frontal cortex. Now, this, believe it or not, this whole area right there doesn't fully develop until you're 25 years old. And that's where your personality and a lot of your rational decision making are located, or, well, lack thereof. Today I want to talk about what happens when your kidney creates a kidney stone. Now, the kidney's job is to filter urea, a waste product, out of your blood, mix it with water to now be urine, and send it out of your body. But occasionally it forms this little mineral deposit. But little is probably not the right word, because if we look at it compared to the ureter, you can see the problem already. It doesn't fit all that well. And it's this size difference that creates all the problems you've heard of, including immense pain. I want to give you a good view of what your internal organs are going to look like. So let's go ahead and move the pec major muscle, the pec minor muscle out of the way, and then I'm going to grab the rib cage or chest plate, and as I move it, we can see the internal organs, such as your liver and diaphragm, your heart and lungs and intestines. But this is what you look like on the inside. What you're looking at here is a lower leg, but what I want to focus on is this thing. This is the tibia, or your shin bone, and you'll notice we've cut a little window into it. That's because I wanted to show you that your tibia, just like all other long bones, is hollow on the inside, right? That's called your medullary cavity. Now, what you'd normally find in there would be yellow bone marrow, which is another type of fat storage. Okay, so what I'm holding here is a real left human hip. You see, it would rest just like this in the skeleton, or just like this in me. But what I want to look at is on the posterior side. This is the gluteus maximus muscle, and I can even open it up. And as I do that, you can see all this really cool musculature, including some nerves. What you're looking at here are 4 different human hearts. Now, as you're looking at them, you might notice that they are somewhat different in size. Now, you may have heard that your heart is about the size of your fist. So looking at these different hearts, I can get a rough idea of how large that individual was. It's not a perfect science. I don't want you to think that every single time your fist tells you the size of your heart, but it's roughly true. Now, based on that, this heart tends to fit really well with my fist. So maybe this person was close to my size and stature. But when we go to this heart right here, my fist is much larger. That tells me that this individual was likely much smaller than I am. Let's talk about your uvula. This is that soft hanging thing in the back of your throat, and it acts to block off the nasal airway when you are swallowing food or some kind of drink. So you can kind of picture the tongue pushing it back, running into the uvula, and then it's going to go into this area called the pharynx, or the oropharynx to be specific. It'll then run into the epiglottis, which is going to get pulled down and block that airway, and it's going to go down the esophagus or your food tube. Now, it doesn't work perfectly every time. If you've ever laughed or coughed, it might be in this open position, and then fluid could then go up and out your nose. I want to show you guys a really interesting birth defect. So we're looking at the glutes, and I'm going to kind of push that to the side, and what we see here are these 2 strands coming down. This is the sciatic nerve, except it's split. This is supposed to be one nerve, and it's not supposed to split like this until it gets to the back of the knee, but in this particular individual, if you look, this is one muscle right here. It almost looks like there's a little tiny muscle there and another one over here. That's the same muscle. What happened is the nerve punctured and it went right through the muscle when it wasn't supposed to. That is a birth defect, and it was something that we just weren't expecting to find. In between your ribs, you have muscles called the intercostals, and if you look closely, you can see these muscles are crisscrossing in their fiber orientation, right? They're just going back and forth. And depending on the direction, it will either elevate or depress the ribs, which will have an effect on whether you're breathing in or if you're breathing out.
I hate to break it to you, but this is not called the weenus. I have no idea where that term came from. This is just elbow skin, or skin superficial to the olecranon process if you want to be really fancy about it. But that doesn't mean that this is uninteresting, because just underneath the elbow skin is a bursa, which is a fluid-filled pouch that you can see we've cut a window into so you can see that it's hollow inside. And that bursa is meant to reduce friction between the elbow skin and the ulna underneath that soft tissue.